All right, fellas, I'm just going to start this thing off cold opening, no regular opening. Friday late afternoon eve. So congratulations to everybody. Made it through the week. We're in the weekend. Shout out to everybody that's going to be watching this in the archive and those of you who are going to straight through in the lives. Um, this is a quick video. Let me try to keep it to 30, 45 minutes at the most for a podcast. Y'all know I usually go an hour and a half as start to talk, but let's try to do 30, 45 here. And got a bunch of stuff going on. About to go to the playground, go to the park, and watch some football games. My son's got a doubleheader, so trying to fit this in the meantime. Shout out to you, Demetrio. Shout out to you. What's up to you, Carlos M? Shout out Carlos M. He's big time now. Carlos M. Shout out to Carlos M, better known as Chicano Prophet. And you're just gonna talk about stuff just this week with American boxing, and currently just we're just it's gonna be one of those shows. Frustrating stuff to talk about. To set it up, let's talk about Shu Shu Carrington versus Sagawa tonight. 13-1 favorite. Betting odds -210 to get the KO. I think he's about +210 decision. So one of those fights that could go either way. I'm not much interested in the fights tonight, to be honest. This is pretty much part of what we've been getting from Top Rank as of late. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Why? Because we're sort of in some weird territory when it comes to Top Rank. But Sagawa's a durable fighter. I was on Blunt's Boxing's Patreon earlier. He does a great job of setting up betting odds, and I agree with a lot of the stuff he says. Sagawa's a durable fighter. He's up for the task. Southpaw versus conventional. He's been stopped once against Jermaine Ortiz, but that was at a higher weight class. And he's an African fighter, fellas. African fighters, they don't cut. Durable fighters, but he has been stopped once against Jermaine Ortiz. But once again, it's a higher weight class. I think another is a 10-round fight. I believe so is the Xander Zayas fight. So this can go either way, fellas. It could be a late stoppage. Shu Shu likes to get guys out of there. He's cut from that Bud Crawford cloth. So I tend to lean stoppage here, and the odds makers do as well. But I'm sort of staying away. And if I get back home tonight in time for this fight from football, I will be playing live betting odds to see how it goes the first round. Xander Zayas, 18-1 favorite against Sosa. -160 to win on points. Another 10-round fight, +160 to win by KO. But these are the fights that you want to see fighters get stoppages and put on shows, because Carrington and Zayas are both on the cusp of stepping up to that elite level. They're both in the contender stage now, not at prospect stage. They're contender stage. So you want to see them put on good performances to give you the green light to say, all right, it's time now. It's time to step these guys up to that elite level. So we'll see if they'll be able to do that. And tonight will give us a better understanding of that. Wide odds fights, 13-1, 18-1. These are the fights that you want to see these guys get stoppages in. And they're tough to call. Will they be late stoppages? Are these decision fights? It's tough to call. But these are the ones you want to see these fighters put on shows. You want to see them put on shows. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Let's see. Surge in the building. Elwin Castillo. Minstrel Monster Benavidez and his BS lies. Do you have a cash app? My super chat isn't working. Nah, I don't have any of that, man. It's good. Just hit that like button. I ain't worried about it. Just hit that like button, bro. It's Blunts and Boxing, and the Patreon is called The Drop. The Drop. I actually have it up right here. Let me see, patreon.com. And if you're on Patreon, it's called The Drop. And it's Blunts and Boxing. He does a great job, man. It's just old school stuff. He's just talking about the fights and the odds. It's just old school, refreshing stuff. So we got that, and there's not much to talk about with it other than what I just said. It could go either way, and these are wide odds fights. And Top Rank, as I stated, is in this weird scenario in which the guys from this generation haven't panned out. Like this wave of guys from Top Rank haven't panned out. Shakur is Shakur. No, talented fighter, arguably French top 10 pound for pound right now, one of the top fighters at lightweight, but injured, fighting once this year, not really much momentum. Two of the past 3 fights, he put everybody to sleep, not his opponent. He put the people watching the fight to sleep. And he's constantly whining and talking down to fans and Top Rank. So obviously that didn't work out for Top Rank. What they invested in him didn't work out. And the same thing is showing with Teofimo Lopez. As Teofimo Lopez, fellas, tonight was supposed to be Teofimo Lopez's fight. This was set up for Teofimo Lopez to fight in New York on Friday night in the theater because he can't do the big arena. He can only do the theater. He hasn't graduated from the theater to the arena, and there's a reason why that obviously he's not seeing and people are not pointing out, right? But he hasn't graduated to that, and it's just not working out for Top Rank because people have gotten in Teofimo's ear, obviously, and you'll see journalists echo this stuff and explain it away that I'd rather not fight than fight on Friday night. Does that make sense to y'all? To just sit out instead of fighting on Friday night? Fighting on Friday night is beneath me. Fighting Devin Haney for $10 million, beneath me. This stuff is beneath me. I belong in the sphere. I should be making $100 million. This type of stuff. And fighting on a Friday night is beneath him. Even though he's a theater fighter. You're from New York and you can't graduate from the theater to the big arena. Yet he's above fighting on Friday night. This was supposed to be a Teofimo Lopez night. Instead, we've got Michaela Mayer fighting a walk-off main event because that's what it's going to be. People are going to watch Xander. They're going to watch Shu Shu, and Michaela Mayer will be the walk-off Friday night fight. In my opinion, anyway. Nothing against her. That's just how it's going to be. But this should have been Teofimo's night. And it's left Top Rank in a scenario in which these guys aren't working out. So they need to start to rush these guys like Shu Shu, like Xander, like Emiliano Vargas, like Abdullah Mason. Those are all talented guys showing promise, showing some possible stardom. And they need to rush these guys. They need to get these guys from 4-rounders to 6-rounders to 8-rounders to 10-rounders up to 12 rounds. They got to get that process going quicker because they're caught in like this mid zone right now. And it's shown in 2024, fellas. Go look at their fights this year. A lot of wide odds fights, a lot of just sticking stuff together. I mean, we got that rematch coming up with Shock Foster. That, I mean, unfortunately we have to do because of bad judging, more bad luck from Top Rank. But this is the type of year we've gotten so far in 2024 on ESPN for the most part. And we've got to rush these guys to the next level because these fighters simply haven't panned out. They simply haven't. Yeah, and they were not. Yeah, I know, right? Like he's graduating from Thursday to Friday to Saturday. And fellas, it's not only Inoue fighting on Tuesday mornings and still garnering the attention he's garnering, right? Out in Australia, Tim Tszyu fights on Sundays, Australian time. But boxing history, they've had big fights on Monday nights. They've had that. They've had big fights on Sundays. This stuff has happened before, but these fighters are trained to think that if I'm not fighting on Saturday night, nobody cares about me. And really what it is Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, you got to give people a reason to tune in. Teofimo has been too up and down, too inconsistent. Shakur just, I mean, why would anybody want to follow the career of a guy who's whining, blaming fans for not understanding what he's doing, the sweet science of what he's doing in the ring, saying, I don't need you guys. I don't need the market, and putting on stinkers of fights. And the good news for him is he's still a talented fighter. So there's still time. There's still a window there, right? But Mayweather is one of one. He's one of one. You're not going to be the type of guy to do that type of stuff and become a superstar in the sport. Has AJ filed a battery lawsuit against Dubois yet? Not yet. Not yet. But fellas, like Devin and Ryan, and look, I think this is a Bay Area thing, isn't it? Like hold 27,000 times per fight, bore everybody to death, still be able to draw in the Bay Area because you're a Bay Area fighter, but not be able to garner much attention from the market or become a superstar outside of that market, and still make above what you generate. And at the same time, whine about that. And then spend more time in certain years in the courtroom than you do in the actual ring. That may be a Bay Area thing. And we look at what the Devin Haney timeline has been the past couple weeks, right? And hit that like button. Shout out to the 35 over on X. Y'all just hit the like button on X. The timeline has been go to boxing's version of male Oprah, Andre Ward. Go to his podcast. He's Oprah, but he doesn't give away free cars, unfortunately. And just he's going to sit there and be your psychologist and just go there and just whine about how the fans just don't understand the sport. Fans don't understand the business of the sport, and how I was wronged and Osterin, and I just couldn't do anything. I couldn't lift my right hand because of the Osterin. And then go over across the pond and whine about how you can't get a free fight for a free ticket for a fight that you didn't ask for a free ticket for till like 10 hours before the fight. And throw people under the bus over that, and then come back and file this lawsuit. And fellas, the Benavidez Theorem, though. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Shout out to you, Remy. I'm starting to find myself talk about business more once too, because there's not much going on here. Just look at the schedule. And also because so many people make excuses for fights not happening, and fighters making terrible moves because of the business. And it's clear to me at this point that American boxing journalists just don't know business. It's clear to me at this point because they seem to be in awe of these power brokers who are just, we talked about that. They're short-sighted, low-value snake oil salesmen. They're not entrepreneurial. We saw that dichotomy 2 Saturdays ago when Dana's clearly giving back to the consumer and one event is taking away from the consumer. We treat everything like a going out of business sale. He's talked about that. And the consumer feels left out of the process. And so in growing numbers, they just leave, right? But they clearly don't understand business. And it's amazing what is explained away as good business moves are. They feel like they have to see both sides of it. So they feel the need to explain the fighter side of this. And I understand, man. Devin Haney feels maybe slighted out of money. Okay. He feels slighted out of money. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve some money that he's not getting out of this situation. I'm not saying he's not. But sometimes it's the cost of doing business. Any business person will tell you there's a cost of doing business that people don't see. And I've had to talk to my wife about that, who also owns a business, and women in particular, they're like pit bulls. And I think any man will understand this who is with a woman, lives with a woman, is they're more emotional. And when they're wronged, they don't let it go. They do not let it go. And sometimes I need to talk to my wife and say, when it comes to business, you got to let that situation go because it's too much of a cost to go after that little bit of money that we were screwed here. It's going to cost us more to do that than to just let that go and learn from being finessed in that situation or wronged in that situation. So much has been focused on from boxing writers about this fighter needs to do this fighter. I'm understanding of this, empathetic of this fighter because of it's the athlete empowerment movement, right? And they don't focus about the fighter number 30 in the rankings who has to hang sheetrock, drywall because there's stagnation at the top because fighters simply won't fight the fights, right? They don't focus on that guy when they talk about athlete empowerment. They don't focus on the poor guy who's going to be the 40 to 150 101 underdog against Richard Torres Jr. and be treated like a bait dog, right? We've talked about that. But there's a video out there of, I often cite this guy because he's a guy who seems to get it. He's people don't give him credit for, he's obviously got a business mind, philosophical thinker at times, but 50 Cent's talking about how early on in his career, before he blows up, Master P was the first one to see it, his talent and where he was going. Didn't have the money to make the deal, but had the money to make a deal. So what he does is he says, I'm going to put you on tour. I'm going to be the first person to put you on tour. We're going to do 8 shows. And 50 Cent's like, and I'm going to give you $50,000 to do these 8 shows. It's like, all right, I need the money. Let's go. So what they do is they do 4 shows. And Master P says, let's cut. Let's take a break. Stuff's not lining up. Let's take a break after these 4 shows. And 50 Cent's like, all right, well, we'll take a break. So what happens is 50 Cent goes on to sell, after the first couple weeks, he goes on to sell 2 million plus, go multi-platinum. And then Master P calls him and says, out of the blue, and says, we're ready. Let's do the other 4 shows. So obviously Master P, as 50 Cent knows at that point, finessed him. And he waited until 50 Cent blew up to do the other 4 shows the second half of the tour to where he can generate more money off of 50 Cent now. And 50 Cent spoke about, I could have took him to litigation. I could have fought this because today's price is different from yesterday's price. We could have gotten the weeds, but I would have made enemies. And it's not worth me going backwards to fight over that. I'm just going to do the 4 shows for the $25,000 that's left. And we're going to move on. We're going to move on. I'm not going to get in the weeds over that. I'm not going to focus on that. We're going to move on. I'm going to learn from the situation. I'm going to learn from being finessed, and we're going to move on. So he learned from the situation. He didn't get in the weeds. And I'm not saying, fellas, that every situation needs to be treated like that. But in this situation, I have an open mind that possibly this is some negotiation tactic. Possibly Devin Haney could be doing something to where he says, we're going to sue him. And then in order to get the rematch, I can hold this over his head and say, this stuff can go away if you just give me the rematch and sign on the dotted line. That's possible. But considering the trend here and how these fighters have been advised, it's the more likely scenario that he's trying to get that little bit of money that he feels is wronged. I don't know, whatever it is. And it may be in the 7 figures. It probably is. But perception is everything. So now the perception is, you hear the words out there, snitch, whiner, all this stuff. That's the perception. And also your identity as a fighter as well. And once you develop an identity, it's hard to develop an identity. And then once you develop that identity, it's hard to shed it if you want to shed it, if it's a bad identity. And I feel like Devin Haney's going in this dangerous place right now to where he's getting caught here. He's getting caught here. He's stuck in the past instead of moving on and saying, look, man, maybe I should go fight Liam Parrow for 7 figures in Australia and get another belt. And then that'll be my leverage and I'll move on. And we can possibly talk about a rematch. Then now we're flirting with only fighting once this year. And it's a no contest. And the perception is this guy's going to spend more time in the courtroom than he does in the ring. And he just doesn't have that type of entertainment value to be able to afford to do that. It's the same with Andre Ward. What did Andre Ward do? Andre Ward won the Super 6, surprised some people, right? And it had people like me saying, look, man, even though this guy isn't a fun fighter, we need to get behind him, American champion, American fighter. But over time, I watched this. And I say, wait a second. I don't like how this guy's moving now. He's suing his dead promoter. He's spending more time in the courtroom than he is in the ring. And maybe that's justified. Maybe it is, but maybe that's not worth doing that. Because now look at the identity that you're building. And now Carl Froch's career is going on. And now we just flock to Carl Froch. He's the one fighting the fights. And Carl Froch does 80,000 in a stadium, right? And then Andre Ward can't sell outside of the Bay Area. And then when he comes back, what happens? He sends Gennady Golovkin a Fugazi deal, email deal the day after he sells out the arena against Lemieux, right, for a pay-per-view. And then as he's moving up to 175 and says, I need 3 tune-ups before I fight Sergey Kovalev. And then he gets a gift decision in the first fight against Sergey Kovalev. So all of that momentum is just thwarted. And then because of how the rematch goes and how he retires, there's a lot of revisionist history, but there were a lot of people out on Andre Ward for those years. And it was really a sad time in his career for the consumer who was invested in him at one point. And his career really went backwards for a while. I don't know, man. I worry about Haney's reputation, but this is more of a macro issue. It's not a Haney issue. It's not a Teofimo issue. It's not a Shakur issue. This is American boxing culture issue that we're in currently. Think of the pound for pound list that you see, right? You'll see maybe 3, possibly 4, depending on the ranking, American fighters in the top 10 pound for pound. And they'll attribute that to, oh, the world is catching up. That's not the whole story. That's only half of it. It's only half of the story. If we look at it from an unbiased point of view, what is it? It's if Daniel Dubois beats Anthony Joshua, which he does, what are we talking about? We're talking about Daniel Dubois. Now he can fight Zhilei Zhang. Now he can fight Bacoli. Now he can fight Anthony Joshua in a rematch. Just think of how we're talking. We're talking about him jumping right back into a tough fight after fighting multiple tough fights to get where he got. Look at the heavyweight division currently, fellas. It's not an accident that the heavyweight division is fighting the fights and we're finding out things about these fighters. It doesn't have that American stench to it. Let's be honest about that. It's an anti-American division now. Big Baby gets knocked out. Deontay Wilder gets knocked out. Where's the American influence? It's not there. Fighters are fighting the fights. You have Riyadh and Saudi Arabia simply putting on fights, probably overpaying these fighters for the time being until they pull the rug. But the point is, we're getting fights and we're finding out a lot about these fighters. But Daniel Dubois comes out of that. He comes out of that mix. And he exceeds whatever the bar was of him, and we expect more of him after that. We're expecting, think of this, Devin Haney went to Australia twice, and we acted like the dude went to Mars. Fellas, you go to Australia, you watch a couple Netflix movies, take a couple naps, and you're there. It's not like this dude is landing on Mars. It's not like he had to put on a space outfit and go to space. They're talking about it like, oh my God, look at what he did. He went to Australia. We got to worry about the judges. We got to worry about those judges because poor American fighter, we got to worry about those judges. They may be corrupt. Are people saying that when Lomachenko comes over here? Were people saying that when Gennady Golovkin came over here with nothing but a backpack on his back at the airport? Were people saying that about Junto Nakatani when he came over here and lives with Rudy Hernandez away from his family, fighting in America? It's our expectations of foreign fighters are still here. Our expectations of American fighters are way down here. We coddle them. We feed them, breastfeed them. We burp them. The poor American fighter. We have to be empathetic because athlete empowerment, we have to be empathetic about these fighters. The dude is suing Ryan Garcia for battery. Maybe he's entitled to it. Maybe so. But are you emotionally invested in that? Like, does that do anything for you? Are we going to be watching this like the OJ case? I hope Tank fights a second time in 2024. Perhaps he sneaks one in December. Benavidez too. But we got to talk about the David Benavidez theorem. The David Benavidez theorem. And shout out to Ambrias Brim. He says something to the effect of, when it comes to David Benavidez, it's always murky. Everything is murky when it comes to this guy. Every single fight, negotiation, we never know up from down. We never know. We always hear about this. He should be fighting this guy and then that guy, and then this guy doesn't know anything and that guy doesn't know anything. And they have a handful of representatives talking, and they're talking in multiple languages. And you just wish the PR person would get everybody in the same room, have a conference call, something, and say, look, man, we need to have one person talking. And I think what it is I heard Ring IQ say this one time, multiple times actually. And he said, that's not, they don't, the PBC model in particular, and this has just become the American model altogether at this point, but the PBC, man, they really did it. They really still do it. And they're saying Al Heyman's back. Boy, can I tell. I can tell. But they can't build fights through fights. They can't build fighters through fights. The model doesn't allow for it. You have a guy running around as an advisor. Nobody knows where he is. He's a mute. So he can't promote, and everybody knows he's the actual promoter. So he used puppet promoters, right? And then, so he can't promote, and then his puppet promoters also can't promote. They're just puppets. That's part of the reason they're there. Is they're largely unimpressive. They can't do it. So they can't properly promote their fighters. Their fighters don't properly promote themselves, and they're largely being overpaid, being paid more than what they generate. Everything's going to pay-per-view. More is put on the consumer. But that model, it cannot build stars. It cannot build fighters through fights. So we need to do it through rumors. You need to do it through Rumorville. You need to do it through the TMZ type thing. So there's constant misdirection. And I think that's part of it. Part of it is incompetence, because there's no reason for Sampson. Nobody was looking for Benavidez. So there's no reason for Sampson, while people are out there thinking Canelo ducked him in September, to say, no, we weren't ready for September. We weren't ready till December because he has broken ribs. Nobody was even looking for that information. And still a lot of people don't know about that information. A lot of people still don't know that Benavidez had broken ribs, hurt hand, hurt arm, because nobody cares. Nobody's looking for the dude. His trajectory is going this way. But they can't build fighters through fights. They refuse to do it. They keep them in this safe bubble. They have their state-run media explaining things away, why it's okay for fighters not to fight the fights, why we can't get Tank versus Shakur, because, I mean, why can't we, right? Neither one of them was doing anything. So why can't we get the fight? And if not, why can't he ask Teofimo for a fight? Why can't he ask Devin Haney for a fight? He's fought at 140. Why couldn't he fight Josh Taylor at 140? And if you ask Leonard Ellerbe, for the one person that actually asked him, he said he doesn't bring any value to the table. But Matteo Barrios does. But we can't demand things anymore as fans. And then when we don't buy things, we can't complain and explain why we don't buy them. Because snarky boxing writers will tell us, you can't complain. You're not the demand anymore. You just start talking about a fight when you're told to start talking about a fight. When it's signed, that's when you start talking about a fight. If you have anything negative to say, don't say it. Don't say it. Only positive here. Or you're not a real fan. You're not a real fan unless you're positive all the time. If you have anything negative to say, you're no longer a real fan. But what has happened, fellas, and you see it in the belt count, we have like 12 belts total in America, something like that, 3 or 4. And I think that's being generous. I think there are only 2 American pound-for-pound fighters right now, and I think that's Bud and Bam. That's just me. I think we're being generous, and once again, that's just coddling fighters, coddling American fighters, giving them stuff they're not earning because they're privileged. They're entitled. But the rest of the world, not as entitled. The rest of the world, the expectations are up here. So it's funny how people will meet your expectations of them. If your expectations are here, they tend to meet them. If your expectations are here, they tend to meet them. So American fighters are down here and they're meeting our low expectations of them. And now everything's bad and it's trickled everywhere. It's the power brokers, obviously terrible, right? And they've always been a necessary evil, but now it's beyond that. Now it's just gross incompetence at best. So that's ugly. And then you got the state-run media. It's trickled down to the fighters. The fighters are out there saying, well, they're going to the male Oprah Winfrey of boxing, Andre Ward's podcast, and complaining about they just don't understand us. They just want to see us fight tigers in the Coliseum. Like, that's basically stuff they're saying. It's like, no, dude, we just want to see fights. Just every once in a while, we're like maybe 30% of the time you give us what we want, but they complain about that. Devin Haney's situation, it's not me telling the dude, shut up and dance. It's not me telling the dude, shut up and fight. It's like, if the athlete is not athleting, better yet, if the dancer is talking more than they're dancing, the market is going to say, it's time to dance. You've talked enough. You're a dancer, right? So dance. It's not just us walking in a room and saying, shut up and dance. Shut up and dance for me. That's not what's happening. They're talking. Look at Twitter right now, fellas. Look at it. Look at the boxing Twitter scene right now. American boxing scene in general. It's all rumorville. It's all negotiation of a negotiation of a negotiation of a negotiation. And then dudes go on the boxing voice, he's ducking him, he's ducking him, he's ducking, no, he's ducking him. And they're fighting like Bloods and Crips. It's never, this fight is signed. That's fight signed. Look at the card we put together. We barely get that. Where are the fights? One of the biggest stories in boxing that this has trickled down, once again, it's trickled all the way down to boxing writers. The boxing writers are, at best, in America, grossly incompetent at this point. I think we got to be honest about that. Bad stuff. Ugly stuff. And they don't get outside of their bubble to see it. They think everything's okay there, but journalism is dead as a whole, but in particular in boxing Twitter is a microcosm of it, right? Boxing writers in America. And they don't see it, but there's a vacuum out there. Let me see what this is. Hold on one second. Who is at my front door? All right, it's a package. One of my wife's 12,000 Amazon packages today. But there's a vacuum out there for an American boxing writer, or there's a few of them doing it, but to take this story and run with it. We already know about the other stories. We already know 2030 vision, the consolidation process, what the Saudis are trying to do. We want you to explain to us why there's a vacuum there for them. We want you to explain, instead of explaining away why the market is where it is with streaming right now, and that Showtime just disappeared. No. Showtime didn't just disappear. Showtime Boxing just didn't disappear. That's not what happened. Amazon gave them, or Paramount gave them metrics that they had to meet that Showtime content, other Showtime content met, and they were kept on, and they were absorbed by Paramount, the app, and Showtime Boxing wasn't one of them. And one of the reasons it wasn't one of them is because it sucked. Because it was a terrible product. In particular, under Steven Espinosa's leadership. So somebody should start writing articles about stuff like that. Somebody should start writing articles about chronic inactivity. One, they're finally starting to catch up to that, right? Chronic inactivity. Why Showtime Boxing is dead. Why there's a market vacuum for the Saudis. And in particular, the big picture here, the macro picture is, why are all of these American fighters stagnant right now? Why are none of their careers going this way, with the exception of maybe a few? Why, for the first time in history, but they're not even going to be honest about this, that we don't have an American star, American boxing star. You could throw out Ryan and Jake Paul, but they're the exceptions because they were stars on social media before they even put on professional boxing gloves. And they're going to try to call Tank a star. He's not a star. He's not a superstar. He's not. How many endorsement deals are these guys getting? Where are they? They're non-existent. These guys aren't household names. So somebody should be writing an article about this is the first time in modern history that this has happened in American boxing. Somebody should be firing the alarms. This is not good. Somebody talk about this. Somebody write articles about this. Somebody put out content about this. But they're not, because boxing writers have also gone down big time. They've gone down the drain. We've lost them too. You just have to work on the next generation, because this one we lost. We lost. There's macro stagnation, like super hyper stagnation going on in American boxing. Just look at it. Shakur, no momentum, and gets injured. Teofimo refuses to fight on Friday night because, of course, it's better to not fight than fight on Friday night. Devin's in the courtroom. Ryan suspended. Morrell Jr.'s manager is on The Boxing Voice explaining why you think it's the right time to do this fight right now. It's like, you want to marinate Benavidez versus Morrell Jr.? The only reason those dudes have fans is because they're connected to Canelo. And those are the new dudes in the anti-Canelo sphere. That's the only reason these dudes have fans. If those two guys fought and you put them on the A side of a pay-per-view main event, it would do like 40 to 50,000 pay-per-view buys. What are you talking about? Marinate what? They can't marinate. They cannot do it. I told you that earlier. I've talked about this. They cannot marinate. These fighters are not active enough to marinate. Look at Brian Norman Jr., fellas. Good Lord. They thought it was a bright idea. And I'm told this by the Galaxy Brains, that it's smart business for this guy to fight 3 or 4 easy fights. Protect that email belt. Even though belts don't matter over here when it comes to Tank, he's got to protect that email belt, because that belt is so important. That email belt, he's got plenty of time. Only 23 years old. Like I said, they breastfeed him, coddle, burp him. You got to burp him too, right? So he's got to fight those 3 or 4 easy fights. And in those 3 or 4 easy fights, he can make the 1.7 million he was going to make against Boots. Why can't he just fight Boots? Well, if he's knocked out. Wait a second. Why did your mind go there right away? Because you were just telling me that Brian Norman Jr. is a talented fighter and he could become a future star, and he's such a problem. But immediately your mind went to him getting knocked out by Boots Ennis. That doesn't make sense. That's the first thing you thought of when you thought of Boots Ennis versus Brian Norman Jr. is, what if he gets knocked out? What if he wins? Or what if he loses and his stock still goes up? Look at Daniel Dubois. Multiple losses. He beats Anthony Joshua. His stock shoots through the roof. And his stock was still good enough to get an Anthony Joshua fight in front of 98,000 people. Worldwide pay-per-view. Universal pay-per-view. Immediately your mind went to, and this is the brainwashing, that's the psyop, is you immediately think about the risk that these guys are taking on and saying, what? Your job as the fan isn't to think about that. Your job as the boxing writer isn't that. That's the power broker's job. That's the manager's job. The promoter, his job is to make fights. Your fight job as the boxing writer should be to make the sport bigger by encouraging fights and to speak up for the boxing fans. And your job as the boxing fan should be to call for fights, to be the demand. Immediately, your mind went to, what if he gets knocked out by Boots Ennis? That doesn't seem like you're very confident of his career and his ability to me. But they'll explain away the dude turning down 17 times his previous market value high to take 3 or 4 easy fights. And then the dude gets injured. And that's what we told them at the time. What if he gets injured? And then what if he loses one of these fights? Because nothing comes without risk. And that's the trend, is these fighters, look at Matias. He goes home to Puerto Rico, first fight of the deal, and loses. He's the boogeyman. The trend is these guys are going to slip up. You can't trust them to marinate fights. Even back in the day, like, who won? Who won between Gamboa and Juan Ma? We'll never know, because they had to marinate it. Sampson openly admitted they marinated Plant versus Benavidez for 5 years. What is that? But the dude is going to fight 3 or 4 times to make the 1.7 he would have just made against Boots. And even in a loss, his stock could have went up. He could have been seen as an endearing guy and not taken much punishment and still been okay, especially if he is talented. But instead, in fighting these 3 or 4 easy fights, how long is this going to take? And that was my question. Because these fighters are fighting twice per year. So now he's injured. And now we likely won't see him again in 2024. So let's say he gets 2 fights in 2025, 2 fights in 2026. What are we looking at, 2027, before we can ask for this guy to fight a fight? A meaningful fight? But it's too much to ask. We can't. We can't ask for these things. We have to wait until the fights are signed, and then we can talk about the fight, and it has to be positive, or else you're not a real boxing fan. And if you got anything negative to say, just don't say it. You can't say it. Don't say it. Don't speak negatively about it. Just don't buy it if you don't want to buy it. It's like, okay, how about I leave like everybody else? You didn't see them leave. You didn't see them walk out the door. Oh, that's probably because they were quiet, because you told them to be quiet. You didn't notice that 90% of the market left in the past 25, 30 years in America. It's because of this. And it's gotten worse. And you're going to have 17 people to write to a decade from now. And you're going to have to go to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and London, UK, and Japan, Tokyo, Japan, to cover fights a decade from now. You'll have a couple fights to cover in Las Vegas, and those guys aren't going to, Japanese people aren't going to be looking for your boxing article. I told y'all, man, these people are soulless. Their writing is soulless. There's a huge market vacuum out there for them, somebody to take this project on and talk about this mess here. Somebody with a bigger platform, talk about it. It's there for you. It's there. But instead, they're not, and they're going to be surprised a couple years from now when, if they are writing for a website, their job is going to be offshore to an AI robot. Nobody's going to know the difference, because you write like a robot. You tweet like a robot. So what the hell's the difference anyway? You might as well hire the robot and pay him $0 to write these articles. Pay them to cover the event. You got dudes covering events from their living rooms now anyway. Remy, $2 super chat. Some fans need to stop with the what ifs negativity. I'm with you, Remy. But back to the ugly situation yesterday. They go into Boxing Voice, and they're starting to spread this rumor that Benavidez versus Morrell Jr. is going to be made, or they're in negotiations, advanced negotiations. You start to get this reporting. And then Mr. Yellow, shout out to him, starts to tag me in, and I'm like, I want nothing to do with this. I want nothing to do with this. And Mr. Yellow will tell you, I want nothing to do with this. Why? Because I already know where it's going. I already know how these dudes operate. The Benavidez way, and once again, shout out to Unbiased Brim, is everything is murky. Everything is muddy. We never know. We never know who sent what sent what. Was it email? Did they send it with a pigeon? We never know because 5 people are talking. They're all saying different things. Do you remember last year when Benavidez said, I was never going to fight Morrell Jr.? Where did this come from? Where did it come from? Your whole team's been saying it for 3 months. What are you talking about? Who's saying this? I've never heard. And now you got Jesse Hart saying it. Yesterday, Morrell Jr., they started to spread this rumor. And then they sent me the clip. Benavidez our Morrell Jr.'s manager is out there saying, you think it's good time to do this? Now you think that makes business sense? January, February, or December, January? And I'm listening to this and it's giving me a headache. I was like, why is this endearing to people? Why do people see these people as geniuses? This is where the low common denominator go. Like this is where the lowest of low, like the most incompetent people go. This is, fellas, like, did y'all see the UNLV quarterback? They're 3-0. Not to get off topic, but it all ties in. They're 3-0, and the dude was promised $3,000 in NIL to go there, whatever, right? So it turns out he's trying to finesse shakedown UNLV for another $100,000 because I'm 3-0. We're 3-0. Why should I just get $1,000 per victory? I need more money. Give me more money. And they're trying to finesse it. The guy leaves in the middle of the night, puts out an alert that he's leaving because he was promised things that they're not giving him. And then his agent is out there saying they have stuff in writing. It turns out they had nothing in writing. They were not guaranteed any of this stuff. They were not promised these things. It turns out the guy just wanted more money because they're 3-0. And UNLV told them, no, we're not giving it to you. The coach is saying that's not how we operate. We're not giving it. We can't have you come in every couple games and shake us down. But my point is, there are people in this guy's ear telling him that this is a good idea, that you're 3-0, go get him more money. And his dad and his agent. And what happens is we've seen this with basketball players all the time. They're getting into the high school player's ear, tell them they're going to be a lottery pick. Same thing with first-year college players. You're going to be a lottery pick. And then these guys fall down the board and go second round, and then you never hear from them. And it's sad because they could have developed longer in high school. They could have developed or in college. They could have developed longer. They could have got better information, and it ruins their whole career. And this poor guy with UNLV, this kid, I can't call him because he's a grown-up, right? These are no longer amateur athletes. But he got bad information. And now he has to leave in the middle of the night. Now he's a free agent, can't play for the rest of the season. And what's going to happen? We talked about reputation. His reputation now is a guy that's difficult to deal with. It's going to hurt him in future deals. It's going to hurt him if he makes it to the NFL. He's going to fall down the draft board because it's going to be tough to get a contract with this guy and deal with this guy and his team. That is now his identity. That's going to be hard to shake. He got bad information. He fumbled the bag. And now, whether we like it or not, the perception of Devin Haney may be he's tough to deal with. You see the Andre Ward interview. You see him dealing with Devin Haney and yelling at him at the fight for not getting him a free ticket. Good Lord, man. And then this stuff with the court, the perception is that he's going to be difficult to deal with. But now the perception of Benavidez's team is it's murky. This whole situation here, you see it. It's Morrell Jr.'s team doing what they're doing. It's Benavidez and his team. What are they known for? Marinating pointless fights. Just average, mundane fights they're marinating for half a decade. And now they want to marinate Benavidez versus Morrell Jr. And the only way they know how to deal with this is part of the Benavidez Theorem. The second part I would roll out is they have to coattail. They're not doing enough work on their own, so they have to coattail off of other fighters. We know he's coattailing off of, they call it clout chasing, the kids. He's clout chasing Canelo. And now it's murky, the word murky again, as to if he really wants that fight or not. And it should be clear. It should be clear. I want Canelo. I'm going to do everything I can to get that fight. There's no 175 or 168. No, he's at 168. I'm going to kill myself to make 168. I'm going to yell at the WBC from the mountaintops to make that fight. I'm going to yell at my team because we're under the same banner, for the love of God. Make this fight. I'm going to call them out publicly, but it's none of that. It's murky. So not only is he coattailing up, he's coattailing down now. Now they're marinating a Morrell Jr. fight with this constant misdirection. I don't think this is just gross incompetence, although that's part of it. When I watch Morrell Jr.'s manager, I said that's what an incompetent person looks like and sounds like. And also, when I hear Sampson give interviews, I say in multiple languages that guy's incompetent. And he's clearly a used car salesman, shaking these people down. And back to this guy from UNLV, you have people in boxing. They gravitate towards boxing. The same guy giving that UNLV quarterback and that high school player who they say they get in his ear and they say he's going to go number 10 and he goes number 58, or he's a free agent, doesn't get drafted. Those guys gravitate towards the boxing scene. And those are the Samson Luka Wicks. That's the Morrell Jr.'s manager. That's these guys. And they're constantly just trying to take from the consumer, but also the fighter, and give them information to get short-term gain. That way they can get quick money, get money flowing into the door. And none of them work on this like a project in order to grow stars over time. None of them. It's all short-sighted thinking. It's all keep them very safe. Don't assume any risk. Steal from the consumer. But Benavidez is clout chasing up and down. Clout chasing off of Canelo, clout chasing off of Morrell Jr.'s name, because it's clear that they don't want to make that fight. It's evident, because what happens? Benavidez comes out like 15 minutes later and says, I was never going to, where is this coming from? Where's this narrative coming from? I was never going to fight Morrell Jr. I'm fighting Jesse Hart. And then 15 minutes later, Jesse Hart is coming out and saying, I'm fighting Benavidez? What? That's news to me. Where's this narrative coming from? I'm not fighting Benavidez. It's all hilarious. It's the mixture of incompetence and this is just how they work. And fellas, it's also this. It's also PBC keeps these fighters in the dark and these fighters have no control. Athlete empowerment, but they have no control. Because when these fighters don't fight the fights, what do people say? Athlete empowerment, fighter empowerment. They don't worry about, like I said, the poor guy, number 30 in the rankings, hanging drywall during the day because he can't make any money because the fighters at the top barely fight. And when they do, look who they're fighting, or they're in the courtroom. So the rankings get stagnated. It's a big bottleneck. But the other part of it is, how are these athletes at the PBC empowered if Stephen Fulton Jr. can't control whether he fights, and then when he fights, he's on a prelim, and he's obviously, if you read between the lines, screaming, I don't want to be on a prelim. I don't want to be on a prelim. Why am I on a prelim? It took an act of Congress to get him out to Japan because PBC didn't want him to go out there to get beat down by Inoue. It took him, I'm sure, on the back ends begging to go out there. But these athletes who are empowered obviously have no power. But look at that situation yesterday, like that big circle jerk. It's Morrell Jr. is supposed to fight Benavidez, but then no. I'm fighting Jesse Hart. And then Jesse Hart's like, I'm not fighting. What is this? I'm not fighting David Benavidez. And I'm sure he doesn't know he's fighting David Benavidez yet. Nobody's told him. And I'm sure there's part of this where David Benavidez is confused. And this is the part, fellas, where I'm not empathetic to him because he's had opportunities to get out of this stuff, get these people away from me. He's had those opportunities and he's signed extensions. I'll feel empathetic for him if he does like Boots and says, no, I need an adult in my room. I need to get these people away from me. And finally, he's back in Philly fighting in front of 14,000, 15,000 people. Because a Philly fighter who's exciting should be in Philly. But Benavidez, as soon as he gets the opportunity, should say, get this Samson Lukowicz guy away from me. Fire my PR person. I'm leaving the PBC. I'll go to Turkey. I'll go to Eddie, anybody else but here. And I got to get my career going. Look at his career. He's the face of murkiness, his team. Tank is the face of privilege. We've talked about that. And they're both under that PBC roster. They're both seen as other than Canelo, the two big PBC guys who I would argue their career is now stagnant. If you don't believe me, like Benavidez may get a second fight in this year, and it was Vodzik with a silent G, and then Jesse Hart. And I have people telling me he deserves a tune-up. Why? Why does he deserve a tune-up? What do you mean? I thought Vodzik was the tune-up. But no, Vodzik. He's big, 175. No, man, that should have been the tune-up. Now he needs another tune-up? Tank versus Frank Martin should have been like the B-level fighter that he fought. And then we step it up. And he tried to age Loma out. That was going to be the fight, right? And now they're going to argue everybody's ducking us. But like I said, has the offer been sent to Devin Haney? Has it been sent to Teofimo? Was it sent to Shakur before he got injured? No? All right, what are we doing here? Lamont Roach, that's it? That's going to be the move? Stagnation. It's a constant state of stagnation. But these aren't serious people, and that's what you need to know. We're surrounded, fellas, and we need to start to look at this, and it becomes more bearable if you look at it like a comedy sketch, like a Saturday Night Live or in Living Color or Mad TV. If you look at it that way, it's funny. It's funny just laughing at these people. But if we're not looking at it like we're laughing at these people, like these are serious people, then it becomes sad. I look at it like I'm looking at a circus at this point. And if I get fights in between, then good. In between the fights, I get some entertainment from these clowns. But they're looking at these clowns like they're geniuses. Al Heyman's back, boy. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it going now. Al Heyman's back. Do y'all really believe Al Heyman left? And the state-run media is gonna act like Al Heyman is back. No, he's been there. He's been there. It's taken him some time to get this thing somewhat going again. But it's where we're at, man. And I hate to be. This is why I've done less content. As you see me, it's been maybe once a week on this channel recently. I have a contract with D-Style through 2024, so I'm still there on his channel every week. But for ACP, but I don't want to bleed on people. I don't want to be overly negative. It's just we need to be realistic as long as we're here. Because who knows, man? I'm at the point now, I don't know where I'll be 6 months as far as boxing goes. But we need to be realistic about where we're at. We are in dire straits when it comes to American boxing. Ugly stuff. ugly stuff. Point me out the star. Point me out the guys whose trajectory is going up, like clearly going up, who have been on the scene. Where are they? Where are these guys? Bam? I think that's pretty much it, right? Bam is the sure thing. Where are they? Who are the serious people who are going to turn this around? The only ray of light coming through those dark clouds is possibly, and I hate to even cheer for it, but because there's some issues with that too, but the Saudis and Dana White and this possible boxing league that they're going to put together to where maybe we can get some fights. And as we know, the fights lead to fighters revealing themselves that you would have never thought. We'd have never thought Daniel Dubois could possibly be a star in the sport. We'd have never thought that he can win a fight like that in front of 98,000 people by knockout. And be a guy who can make real money in this sport. But that's what happens when you put out the fights. It spits out a surprising end result. It spits out a surprising answer when you just put on the fights. And I wish we could do that in American boxing, and possibly the Saudis can come in and do that for the time being. And we could get some real stars that we actually know things about. We don't know anything about Tank. We know the perception of him. We know the identity as a knockout fighter, but he hasn't been in there with a guy who can test that yet to where we really know who the guy is. And there are a lot of American fighters like that. He's just the face of it. He's the face of that. We want to call him the face of something. He's the face of that. He's the face of privilege, entitlement, and he's the face of whatever that is. Not knowing who the guy is and fluff. Identity based off of not much, but the eye test. He's the face of that. So, I don't know, man. Y'all enjoy y'all's weekend. I'm off to watch some football. God bless. Peace.